What do people think makes them look cool, but actually makes them look like a douchebag? Neckbone said, I quit a job because the new manager was like this. Didn't have a clue what half the forms we give patients to fill out were and refused to learn. Just said wrong things like they were fact, which is especially unacceptable when your idiocy ends up with people getting bills in the multiple hundreds. Primo DeVito said, I have a coworker who has the gift of gab and is very proud of his ability to give people false assurances while being extremely vague, essentially just bombarding them with words until they're satisfied. It's a useful trick, I suppose, but when you hear him do it in real time, you realize he's just a very good liar. Worldly Bid 956 said, and the ones who speak as fucking loud as they can just to ensure the attention never leaves. Edit, R. I really feel like I should explain myself better. While writing this down, I had some very specific people in mind who were known to be loud even other than the tonality of their voices. Basically people who cross boundaries and try to establish themselves as the prime member of a group they were engaging with. More of a personality thing than about physical aspects. I have had friends who were pretty loud-voiced too. Even I tend to raise my voice in excitement sometimes and have to be told to tone down. I'm sorry if this came off the wrong way. I didn't intend to XD. MRS Crocodile said, I hate these pranks. Not to sound old and crabby, but pranks used to be something everyone could laugh at and were harmless, like a sticky note on the bottom of your computer mouse. If scaring strangers gives you joy, you're not a prankster, you need professional help. Edit, wow. That's a lot of responses. So I have been trying to think of a good prank response for my stepdad. Some time ago he put giant googly eyes on the front of my car, didn't hurt the car. And I didn't notice for 3 days. Got me good and we both laughed our asses off when he told me it was him. I've been going to the store, work, etc. Had no idea. I've been trying to think of something good and along those lines to get back at him. You guys might be the right crowd to ask. Any ideas? Something harmless obviously, but that he may not notice right away. Edit 2. Thanks for my first gold. Puddinhead 742 said, my favorite is switching all of the furniture in multiple rooms of the house. My second favorite is putting a rubber band around the trigger of the old school sink sprayer hose trigger so that the next person who turns on the water gets hosed. Occasionally I forget and then I get hosed. But my favorite prank of all time was a family friend who was narcoleptic and would fall asleep randomly when he got excited or stressed or after someone told an especially good joke. Anyway, John loved to hide and jump out and scare his wife and would randomly hide behind a door and wait for the right moment. But his wife Carol had figured this game out and had the perfect weapon to use against him. She would walk in place, calling, John. John. We eat your are, and he would get so cranked up with anticipation that he would pass the fuck out right where he was hiding. Carol would then walk around the house and find him in a limp pile behind a door or in the bathtub, snoring away. I miss them. Witbat Mobile said, endlessly talking and bragging about their private lives. Example, I had a real dick of a boss who once said, man, it wasn't yesterday I got laid with that woman after a customer left, which made me and my colleagues somewhat uncomfortable. He also talked about how his wife better show those TTs for everything he does. I'm not interested and I think it is super trashy to talk like that. Edit, he isn't my boss anymore. Speed Demon DB said, when people talk like that it's two things. A. Once in the blue moon they got lucky and found someone who would do the deed and now they have to brag about it so everyone thinks they had a very active sex life and that was just an example of the many encounters. B. He is just lying to make himself appear as a player. I know plenty of guys who have great success with women and have no problems finding a new one each week. Not one of them is bragging about it like this. Even if someone specifically how hot a girl he has hooked up is. The Sinning Robot said, this, people hate to admit it, but yeah, that guy who brags about having sex all the time? He actually might have sex all the time. But that doesn't make him doing that, the bragging, any less pathetic or uncomfortable. I dislike when people resort to the lying to compensate conclusion because all it does is inadvertently say that if it's not a lie then it makes the behavior okay. Truth or lie, it's still gross to openly brag about your sex life to people who aren't encouraging you to, or to share personal details about someone else without their consent. Prior Prism said, this is very specific, But I once knew a bloke who thought he was cool for not liking Game of Thrones, which is fine, but would then post spoilers of it on social media along the lines of I don't watch or care about Game of Thrones, but X died in the most recent episode, unlucky if you saw this. I fell victim of it once and I literally thought my blood was boiling. I was so angry. The lesson here is probably to stay off social media before you've seen the most recent episode of a show you love. But still, fuck that guy. Mayo98 said. Happened to me in school. I was the shy kid and a mean bully always liked to pick on me and she was so FK and strong that I knew better not to mess with her. One day we were playing a game and she got mad at me, punched me, and announced that we're playing and selecting teams again and the team leaders would be herself and me, said in a condescending tone. Everyone at that instant said that they would like to be in my team and came to me and literally crowded me. While she was 6 feet away, all alone. Felt like a complete boss that day. My other throwaway 90 said. Years ago I went to school with a kid who had seizures so bad that she had to wear a special helmet, among other problems. She was the target of relentless bullying by one boy in particular. He kept getting away with it because he was discreet and the victim had difficulty speaking up for herself. Well, one day she finally snaps. I didn't see it personally but the way I heard it, she basically headbutted the guy with her helmet until his nose exploded. Bully had to go to the hospital. His shitty parents showed up looking for vengeance, but quickly ran out of steam because of 2 problems. 1. None of the teachers, students, or staff saw anything, despite the incident occurring in a crowded hall, and 2. The victim was a disabled girl. The bully ended up getting arrested for pulling a knife on a cop a few years after we all graduated. He was never going to amount to much in life. CorgiGal89 said. I have friends like this and I'm so glad I've put distance between myself and them over the years. A couple years ago we were all in Disney and were just sitting around eating and one of them turns to look at my phone and loudly goes, "Are you playing Pokemon Go?" To which I replied, "Yeah." And they all proceeded to shame me for playing. Since then anytime I've been with them and look at my phone they ask if I'm playing Pokemon Go in a mocking tone. My current group of friends will see me play and not say a thing other than maybe ask a question. Big improvement over the last group. Bopper34 said. I had a professor like what you described and I switched majors cause she taught quite a few classes in my major. First day of class she tells everyone that you'll be lucky to get a C on your own. First couple tests I studied my ass off and got like a 12% grade after the first month. I looked at the classes I had to take and she taught 3 or 4 more of them so I changed my major cause I knew I wouldn't be able to get past her. Dinky276 said. Have a friend like this. He asked me if he could tell his school that when I went to the hospital for suicidal thoughts and ideation, and spent a week in the BSU, was traumatic for him and he had to come home a lot because of it. He didn't come home a lot to my knowledge. Wanted to use my suicidal depression as a get-out-of-jail-free card and grab a couple extra GPA points. I'm kinda fucked up about it. Scarseb said. Gatekeeping a music artist like they discovered them and are the whole reason for their success. Don't get me wrong, support the artist but don't be that asshole that determines who is worthy of a common trend. Neville the dog said. This has always been true with music and I would argue was even more true before, when you had to buy physical copies of things and they would be on display in your house. It was quite a commitment back then. It was also much harder to find out about cool music. You almost had to know the right people or immerse yourself in a subculture. This made people with good taste very useful. Now it's just so easy to have fleeting fancies with this genre or that. Earl Rosen said. Had a guy I thought I was closer with and we joked around a lot. One day he got triggered and told me to fuck off, etc. A friend of ours came later to me and told me he didn't mean it and stuff. We talked for a whole while and while a lot was taken as a joke I went too far sometimes while still thinking it's all fun and mutual. Made me realize that there is a thin line and you should be careful nonetheless. Felt really bad because I didn't intend to be an ass. Bumblebee 1977 said. I was hiking with my family in Montana last week. We were the only people on the trail for the entire day, but as we were leaving we could hear music coming closer. 2 hikers came into view. As we came into view for them, they turned the music off until well after we passed each other. In the area we were in, it is recommended to hike in groups and make noise to scare off any bears. I wondered, since it was only two hikers, if they played the music to scare off bears. Either way, I was okay with it as they respectfully turned off the music as soon as they saw us. Rossend0322 said, I live in a pretty small residential area where literally every house has small children or grandchildren that play outside daily. Anyway, a guy bought a garage doors down from me and hosts regular meets. Obviously we all expected this same behavior, but turns out that they're all actually really cool. No speeding or excessive noise. It's kind of funny watching them drive down the street in first or second gear trying to be respectful. Best part is all the kids love to see the cars drive by get excited when someone revs the engine for them. It's not often you see such a diverse group of people get along so well. Scottish Doc said, reminds me of the car club I was a part of in college. A new guy found out one of his classmates had an AMG 63, expensive, fast Mercedes, and invited him to come out. We had permission to be in the lot. This dude I guess wanted to make an entrance and comes careening into the lot at 100 plus mph, promptly loses control, and slams into a curb hard enough to destroy his front wheels, bumper, radiator, and God knows what else. Then, of course, blue lights come on. The guy gets a reckless driving ticket and the club is no longer allowed in the lot. The guy tried to play it off so cool too, like he didn't care at all. It was so pathetic. Maybe he actually didn't care though, because we found out later that his dad in Dubai bought him a brand new one 3 weeks later. Some people. Edit. I will add that the crash was pretty spectacular. The curb was a part of one of those islands in the middle of a parking lot where they plant trees and stuff. He didn't hit a tree, but he definitely went airborne and left a little pieces of his car all over the island and about 5 feet past it. It was like seeing an action movie in real life. Quiet Being 15 said, undermining a person every time they try to talk. My ex did this to me and the amount of confidence I've lost is terrible. Still recovering after 3 years. Teasing someone when they gather guts to talk in a group and then laughing is useless. Cannot explain how badly it hurts. Edit. Thank you all for the lovely comments. I appreciate each one of you. Lychee Lover said, I had a new guy start at the job site, and the first chance we had to loiter and shoot the shit, this brat proudly let us all know he just got out of prison, like it'll make him seem hard and exotic or something. He drove drunk and killed one half of a newlywed couple, and has no regret. He still drinks behind his parole officer's back and drives despite losing his license. Too fast always, drunk usually. Everyone was just disgusted. Especially the guy who had been in a coma for a few weeks due to a drunk driver, and the guy who had a loved one killed by one. I suppose there could be reasons for going to prison that legit are badass, maybe killing someone who molested your kid, or stealing to fund a life-saving medical treatment for a loved one, but most crimes are shameful. I suppose this kid listened to some sort of aggro music that makes it sound like doing time is impressive. Not sure what the deal was, as I tried very hard to avoid his company. Vanilla said, acting like they don't care about anything. Like sure, it was cool in the early 2000s. But now when I see a dude acting like he's too cool to like movies, or games, or hanging out, it's just so cringy. Like bro, you're not special for saying you don't like anything. And I don't mean introverts, like myself, who genuinely don't want to do stuff sometimes. I mean more the dude who will agree to hang out, and then the whole time is just complaints, and this is so lame. Chris 2002 said, constantly talking about your sex life. How you cheat on girls and what you did with them. I'm speaking strictly of someone speaking of them in a belittling way and kind of disrespectful. I had a classmate who literally all he cared about was sex and how many girls he could bang. Every single conversation was about that, to the point of him fucking most of his friends' exes and shit. He filmed a bunch of girls without their consent too and brags about this and cheating on girls, which he made them believe he really liked them, also laughing at how he treats them and shit. I don't get how this is cool in any shape or form, and so many guys looked at him like a god or some shit. Like genuinely looked up to him and wanted to be the same way. It's extremely toxic, douchy and just wrong emo. Patsy Harris said, I have a friend whose house I hated going to growing up because they had these huge golden retrievers that would jump all over you when you came in, and they all just thought it was so dang cute. Same friend, grown up now, has a young, but full-sized, golden retriever now, and recently told me a story about how she took him to a crowded festival. He was just curious about some kids in front of them in line, and the dad of the kids told her she shouldn't bring her dog out if he is not trained. She told me this story to show how other people are assholes. The end of the story was her screaming obscenities at this man as she drove away. I wasn't there, but I just didn't know what to say about that one. She is completely the asshole here. Apparently her partner told her the same. Luckily, I just sort of went to a wondering how to tell an old friend that they're being a huge piece of work. Paradox Pancake said, yelling at retail, fast food, or just giving off any sense of smug superiority over them. People in these positions do not often get paid enough to deal with abuse. In fact, no one gets paid enough to deal with abuse. As someone who once worked in retail, I can assure you that you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar, and I absolutely went out of my way for the customers that were nice to me, to a point where I'd even stay late trying to fix their problems because I wanted to genuinely help them, and this is coming from someone who never works overtime. However, if you yelled at me, was snarky, talked down to me, etc., I can almost guarantee you that I'd enforce company policy to a T and ensure that it did not favor whatever you wanted me to do for you. This is the thing that people don't realize. Those customer service reps are being paid to represent their company, but it's not them that you have a problem with, it's the company itself. They are not the company. They're just the person being hired barely anything to represent it, while the executive or high-level employee that likely made the decision that is screwing you over or making you angry in the first place is hiding away in their posh corporate office. I'm not saying that you shouldn't get angry or let someone who is lying or trying to advantage of you off the hook. There have been situations where I've been firm and dropped my smile against people in these positions who are either lying or being disrespectful, but I never raise my voice. It's not worth it, and there is nothing to be gained from it. People around you aren't going to have any context either. They're just going to think you're some asshole screaming at some customer service rep who gets paid a borderline slave wage to deal with this bullshit on a regular basis. All of this is basically to say, be good to people. Talk to them in the way that you'd want to be talked to if the positions were flipped. You'll be a lot more successful and get a lot further. Angry Panda 83 said, had a neighbor that did this, almost to an extreme. He had a big loud Harley and he'd push it to intersection away from all the houses and start it. He worked at a unit where their starting time was early like ours. Allard of respect for that guy. He even drove respectfully as well. Not like many a douche in the area that are opening throttles wide and weaving in and out of traffic. Then get pissy when people are too close behind them in traffic. S-man was just a genuinely nice person. Shikuza said, some tattoos. People wearing a military police fire uniform out of place to get attention. Overly jacked guys walking like a robot around the public pool. I'm all for working out and am built, but muscles don't turn you into a cyborg that can't move. White-rimmed sunglasses. 1 bazillion accessories on your Jeep when it's clear you've never been off-road, and this is from a person who's owned multiple Jeeps and loves Jeeps. Constantly talking about CrossFit, keto, posting puddles of workout sweat at 4:30 a.m. on their Instagram because they watched that David Goggins video. People that constantly talk about being successful and repeating self-affirmations. Women that have to work and wine consumption into every conversation. I like wine, you like wine, but you don't have to bring it up if we are discussing a meteor shower.